Well, it looks like the coalition is breaking down as more Democrats are leaving Senator Schumer. It's like forgot his first name for a second there. Chuck Schumer's sinking ship. And boy, are the cracks showing there in Chuck Schumer's personality. He freaked out yesterday when a reporter dared to call him on his hypocrisy. We'll show you that. And some anger shown by John Thune, the Republican leader. Good, Senator Thune. Come on, figure out what time it is right now. It's time to get a little angry. We'll show you all of that coming up in just a second. And Operation Arctic Frost doesn't do it justice. Instead, we should call it Operation Watergate times 1,000. What we're learning about the weaponization of the Justice Department at the hands of Merrick Garland, Joe Biden, and the entire apparatus of the FBI. It was stunning what senators said yesterday in a press conference. We're going to show you all of those details and what happened and what needs to be done about it. That's coming up. We're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, but trust me, it's worth it. You need to know about this, and considering the rest of the media isn't covering it, well, we're going to do that. That's all coming up right now. My name is Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Really appreciate you being here today, as you are every day. And now would be a great time to like this video. It helps boost our show, and it helps get more people coming here to join the community that we've built. And we love that. If you like the way we present the news and give you analysis and context to the news stories that the media likes to lie about, then why don't you help us make sure that we get this content in front of more people? I bet a lot of you have just learned about this show over the course of the last 4 weeks. Well, the reason you got to see it is because everyone watching gave this video a like and subscribed and added some comments down below. In fact, while you're here, why don't you tell us, when did you first start watching this show? That will really help us track the size of our audience and where it's coming from. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. You know, there are fad diets. I've tried them. I've gone for them. You know, it's the all protein or the all keto or the all what was the paleo thing that you used to do? You go on a diet, you lose the weight, you go off the diet, you gain the weight. Maybe you gain some more, and then you got to go do something else. Doctors call it weight cycling. Half of Americans do it. And if you do it enough, you're at risk of diabetes, liver damage, heart attack, stroke. If you lose 10 pounds or so, and then you put the pounds back on and a couple of more, it puts tremendous strain on your organs, and it could lead to serious health issues. Most people need help to stop weight cycling. So here's a great way. It's non-prescription lean. It's created by doctors. It's an oral supplement. It's not a GLP injectable. You're not going to be sticking needles anywhere. And the science is impressive. Its studied ingredients target weight loss in 3 powerful ways. Lean helps maintain healthy blood sugar, super important. It helps control appetite and cravings, obviously very important. And it literally helps burn fat by converting it to energy. And burning fat helps keep the weight off. If you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace and keep it off, end the weight cycling. Get lean. Add it to your diet and exercise lifestyle. Get 20% off when you enter Larry at takelean.com. The code's easy. It's my name. It's the name of the show. Larry at takelean.com. Well, the cracks are showing, as I said, and Chuck Schumer lost his cool yesterday when asked a very simple question. You see, Chuck Schumer wants to tell the media, who will gladly run up on his lap and curl up and let Chuck Schumer scratch him behind the ears. The media mostly will gladly repeat the lie that Republicans are now engineering the starvation of American children because they're not funding the SNAP program, EBTs, food stamps. Of course, you know that the reason that there's a funding crisis is because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have refused to fund the government. It's really that simple. So here's Chuck Schumer fielding a question about that. And you tell me, does this seem like a man who is confident, in control, and on the winning side of this argument?
Irrespective of the dispute on whether USDA contingency funds can be used for SNAP benefits.
It is not, wait a minute, excuse me. It is not a dispute. It is fact they can use it, and the Republicans say it.
Okay, but there's, only 5 or 6 billion, and it's not cost $8 billion monthly just to administer. I mean, if anything, it would only last a
It does
couple
not
weeks.
cost $5 or $6 billion to administer. There's enough money to start feeding people right away. $6 billion's a lot of money, and they're using it for other things. $20 billion for Argentina, hundreds of millions for Kristi Noem's plane. Who are we kidding here? The bottom line is they can fund it just as in 2019, just as in other shutdowns, for a long period of time.
And they also, if
ahead.
the contingency fund, which is $6 billion, which gets you nearly a month, 3 weeks, runs out, then they can pass Senator Lujan or Senator Hawley's bill, both of which we support. We know that there'll be 60 votes for that. Why aren't they calling it up? They're not calling it up because the House isn't here to pass it. That's the way it works. The House would have to come here. They probably would have to vote on the Epstein files, but they're choosing to let kids go hungry instead of having to vote on the Epstein files. There's no doubt about it. They have been out for 6 weeks on vacation.
Just think, if they have all this money for Argentina and all this money for other things, they have enough money to keep funding SNAP, and they know it. And I just want to say what Lujan said. Johnson just lies. He lied about on immigration, on the undocumented. He's lying about this. He just outright lies, plain and simple. It is not illegal, and his own president has done it.
Okay, so when you're calling on Amy Klobuchar to bail you out because you lost the plot on your talking points, you've got a problem. And he continued to rant and rave here. Take a look.
Yeah, there are occasional talks between Democrats and Republicans on this issue, but our Republican colleagues don't seem to be offering anything different than what their leadership has had so far. We hope that will change. Yes, we are saying the Republicans can fund it now, and they're using these people as hostages. Plain and simple. Next, that's the answer. The answer is they can fund it right now. Okay, right now.
He's angry. Acting like he just ate a raw hamburger off of his own grill. This is Chuck Schumer in his prime, folks. All right, just so you know, this is what the dispute happens to be. The Democrats refused to vote to fund the government. Republicans in the House of Representatives passed a clean continuing resolution. The continuing resolution continues funding the government at the level that it had been funded. No new appropriations, no new budget, no new tax cuts, no new increases or decreases, just maintain the spending. That would be the spending of the last fiscal year. That would be Joe Biden's budget. Joe Biden's budget. And Republicans said, okay, fine, we'll keep funding the government for another couple of months at Joe Biden's budget. They passed that third week of September, well before they ran out of funding and authorization for the government, which happened at midnight, September 30th, October 1st. Democrats in the Senate refused to pass that bill. That's what started all of this. Now, when you refuse to pass the bill that continues funding the government, then suddenly you can't pay for things. Now, you've been able to move some money around here and there. The president moved money out of existing programs in the Pentagon so that our military didn't miss a paycheck the first time they were due one in the middle of October. Also, by the way, these SNAP benefits, why are we just hearing about the SNAP benefits now? The EBTs, the food stamps, why didn't we hear about this early in October? Oh, here's something that isn't reported anywhere. They didn't need to put SNAP in danger at the beginning of October and through the month of October because there was newfound money in the federal treasury that they weren't expecting coming from President Trump's tariffs. That's right. The SNAP program has been kept afloat so far during the government shutdown because of the very tariffs that this guy and his party oppose and scream about. So Trump was able to do that. Now we're in day 30 of the shutdown. 14 times Republicans had passed in the Senate or voted to pass in the Senate this continuing resolution to keep funding the government at Biden's budget levels. Democrats continue to refuse. And now you've got Chuck Schumer frothing at the mouth, spitting mad, having a temper tantrum, pounding. Have you noticed he moves his arms both at the same time all the time? Why is that? What is going on with Democrats and their hand gestures, like Gavin Newsom and things like that? It's weird. You got him pounding the podium with both fists at the same time in synchronicity. And why is he angry? He's angry because Donald Trump won't figure out a way to shuffle money in the budget to put a Band-Aid on the bleeding artery that they sliced open with their machete. That's why they slit the throat of the SNAP benefits and every other program that needs to be funded by the federal government. They slit that throat with their machete, and now they're standing there screaming because Donald Trump won't bend over backwards, go out of his way, and put a Band-Aid for what, 7 days, 8 days on the blood spurting out of the artery of the SNAP program. What did you think was going to happen when 14 times you didn't vote to fund the government? Programs start going bankrupt, and you can't keep them afloat. And now he's pissed off that Trump isn't bailing him out. It's like he set fire to a building, and now he's angry that the fireman isn't there yet. This building's going to burn down. Where are you? Hey, I got an idea. How about you don't set the building on fire? You jack. Chuck Schumer's not the only one angry. I'm not the only one angry. Of all people, the Republican majority leader in the Senate, John Thune, this guy, I wish he got more angry. I wish he showed that, but look at him yesterday, and I'll explain why he's so angry. Everyone's like, why was John Thune so angry? I'll explain in a sec.
Let me just point out, if I might, that we are 29 days into a Democrat shutdown. And the senator from New Mexico was absolutely right. SNAP recipients shouldn't go without food. People should be getting paid in this country. And we've tried to do that 13 times. And you voted no 13 times. This isn't a political game. These are real people's lives that we're talking about. And you all have just figured out, 29 days in, that, oh, there might be some consequences. There are people who run out of money. Yeah, we're 29 days in. And they've done their best to make sure that a lot of these programs are funded. But at some point, the government runs out of money. 13 times, people over here voted to fund SNAP. 13 times they voted to fund WIC. My aching back. Finally realized this thing has consequences. Well, you know what? What Democrats are doing here. They're making plans to keep the shutdown going.
All right. So, good. Get angry. We want more anger. Senator Thune, you got to figure out what time it is. It's time to get angry. A little past time, actually. By the way, I'm from Michigan originally. Is there anything more Midwest than your dorky uncle getting angry and saying, my aching back? For those of you who don't speak Midwest, let me translate my aching back to you. When somebody's angry and they yell my aching back, what they mean is, you mother. That's what he's saying. But instead, he's a little more disciplined and he yells my aching back. But trust me, as a kid, older relatives yelling that, it was the same on my ears. I knew that there was going to be problems. Why is John Thune so angry? Why is John Thune so angry? Because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have set this bomb. They decided that they were going to go for weeks and weeks saying that we were ripping health care and health insurance away from Americans so that they were going to die in the hospitals, or they wouldn't even get admitted to the hospitals and die on the streets. Of course, those Americans are all illegal immigrants that we didn't encourage Democrat governors to fund with their health insurance, thus driving up costs across the board. Also, yes, health insurance is super expensive. We didn't pass the Affordable Care Act. We didn't pass Obamacare. We didn't screw up the health insurance industry. We didn't say that we should continue subsidizing the health insurance companies with COVID-era subsidies the way Democrats want to continue extending here 5 years after the pandemic. None of that was our doing. But Thune has to endure all of these Democrats going on television and standing in the well of the Senate and doing their press conferences and doing their No Kings rallies, screaming that Republicans are taking health care away from Americans. And that's why the government is shut down, which is an absolute total lie. Now, for the last 5 days, since that message isn't working, now they're saying that we're starving children and taking food off of their table and out of their grocery baskets because SNAP is now unfunded. And it's Republicans' fault. And again, they're voting to fund the government. They're the grown-ups in the room. They're the ones who are actually doing the responsible thing. And you've got Democrats going all over television and Jake Tapper and all these George Stephanopoulos repeating the lie on media. If anyone watches corporate legacy media anymore, repeating the lie that children are going to go without food and it's all Republicans' fault. So yeah, he's a little pissed off. As well he should be. As well you should be. Mike Johnson this morning at his 10 a.m. press conference asked about the rare flash of anger from his counterpart in the Senate and his reaction.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Speaker, you mentioned today that the Senate's going to vote for the 15th time. Senate Democrats are supposedly. The Senate's actually not voting today on the CR to fund the government. Do you agree with Leader Thune's decision to let Democrats sit with this over the weekend? They're not voting today on the CR, so SNAP benefits are going to lapse. They're not taking that vote today.
Well, Leader Thune was pretty upset yesterday. We've all seen the video. Mad John on the floor, and it's appropriate. When we come in here and do these briefings, I can empathize with them because we're happy warriors. I like to come in and have a good time in press conferences and tell you good news and all of that. But this feels very much like in my state, Louisiana is a hurricane state. It's like giving a briefing during a hurricane, a Cat 5 hurricane, right before it hits shores. We put the sandbags around our homes and we board up the windows and we do everything we can to prepare, but we know the real pain is about to hit and we feel helpless in doing anything about it. And that's the same emotion and that we feel here at the podium and when we're on the floor. And Leader Thune let them have it yesterday because they were trying to play games, and we're just fed up with it. He's a very even-tempered, calm guy. I mean, I try to maintain the same demeanor, but it's infuriating to us. I'm not going to second guess his decisions on when they schedule the votes each time, but he's probably about had it with their nonsense. And when they tell him and they thumb their nose at him and give him, and say other things that they like to drop the F-bomb now for fun, for emphasis apparently. When they tell him those things, he probably recognizes it's a futile effort. He realizes they're dug in, that they don't care. They're more afraid of the Marxist, socialist, far left in the party than they are the harm that they're going to cause in the American people. That's a fact, and you need to make them try to refute that because they can't. I'm grateful again for our New York colleagues for holding their ground and standing guard as they do and for being here. Thank you all so much.
There you go. And again, the lie out there that the left, the narrative that they're trying to push forth, I just need you to be equipped with the right response, okay? Because you're going to hear this all the time. Oh, people are going to lose their SNAP benefits. They're going to lose food stamps. They're not going to be able to feed their family, and it's all Republicans' fault. And just respond this way. It's really simple. If Democrats voted with Republicans, as Republicans have been voting for the last 6 weeks now, if Democrats joined them in funding the government, would the SNAP benefits be in danger? That's all. Simple yes or no question. And the answer, of course, is no. There'd be no problem if Democrats voted to fund the government. That's just the fact. Oh, yeah, but the Republicans could move money. If you voted to keep the government open, this wouldn't be an issue. Be all taken care of. Oh, but Obamacare and insurance rates, and they're going to... Just answer the question. You're blaming Republicans. Republicans have voted. They're on the record to fund every program in the government at Biden levels. It's Democrats who say no. It's Democrats who say no, and it's because AOC, Bernie Sanders, Zohran Mamdani, and the power base of the Democrat Socialist Party, they're not Democrats anymore. They're the Democrat Socialist Party. They demand this fight. They demand. They say it out loud. No, well, if we did that, we'd lose our leverage. Okay, fine. Listen, that's your political tactic. Fine. Don't be blaming Republicans. You choose to have your leverage, and it's at the expense of children having their basic groceries bills paid for. That's fine. You've made that political calculation. And by the way, that's why you're now officially the Democrat Socialist Party, not the Democrat Party, because that's how socialists think. It's how they get power. That's how communists, when people are feeling good and they're be able to feed themselves and there's prosperity, they never vote to turn their country communist. It only happens when they're feeling pain and suffering. And that's the plan. They want you so upset and suffering so much and so desperate that you'll even vote for a freaking socialist. Because why not? It can't get any worse. And then it does. And then it does. We've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. Strangely, though, the facts are so obviously on Republican side that even the lying hacks in the corporate media have to come to the table and put pressure on Democrats when they try to push lies. Here's a great moment. There's Hakeem Jeffries, again, without the Frito Bandito mustache and the sombrero. I don't like this look nearly as much as the sombrero look, but you do you, Hakeem. He caught in a bald-faced lie here as he continues to say, well, Johnson won't talk to us. Johnson won't come to the table. Johnson won't say anything. Johnson, really? Mike Johnson isn't talking to you? Interesting.
Mike Johnson's not willing to sit down and have a conversation. Y'all did have a phone conversation, I believe you said earlier today. Who initiated that call? Was that you or was that Speaker Johnson?
It was a call from Mike Johnson. It was very brief, and it wasn't a substantive discussion in terms of finding a path forward.
But was he calling to talk about the government shutdown?
I mean, you could say that was in the ballpark, but, it was a private conversation that will remain private. However, nothing meaningful came out of it, again, because Donald Trump has not given Mike Johnson permission to enter into a bipartisan negotiation. Caitlin, I mean, House Republicans have been literally on vacation for the last 5 weeks. They've canceled votes 5 consecutive weeks in a row. They are uninterested in doing anything other than jamming their partisan Republican spending bill down the throats of the American people.
Blah, 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 talking point. He's trying to pivot and change the subject. The point was, he says Mike Johnson won't talk to him. So Caitlin Collins says, well, wait a minute. Didn't you have a phone conversation with him? Yes, we did have a phone conversation. Well, did you initiate it or did he initiate? Well, he initiated it. Well, did you talk about the government shutdown and a way forward? Well, I guess it was kind of in the ballpark there. So you're lying. We went from Mike Johnson won't talk to me to, oh, okay, we had a conversation. Oh, well, okay, actually, he called me and reached out to me. To, oh, yes, we did talk about the shutdown, but no, it wasn't substantive. Okay, let me translate that for you. It's not a substantive, serious conversation about reopening the government because Mike Johnson isn't close to acquiescing to all of our demands. That's where the Democrats are right now. Let me just reset the table for you in case you missed it, because these are the things you need to say to your liberal brother-in-law at Sunday dinner this weekend, or at the crazy, AOC loving coworker you've got 3 cubicles down. You need to know all of these facts and the reality that's at play here, because the lies are just cascading. We had an election in November. The American people overwhelmingly gave the majority from the Democrats to the Republicans in the Senate. They also retained the majority in the House with the Republicans, and they overwhelmingly gave the White House and the executive branch to Donald Trump and the Republicans in a way that we've never seen in decades. Every single swing state. Obama, when he ran for re-election in 2012, he didn't win every swing state. Romney won some. In fact, Romney took a state that he had won, that Obama had won in 2008. Romney took it in 2012, right? Trump won every single swing state. Never happened before in modern electoral history since Reagan, okay? He won the popular vote. Republican hasn't done that in over 20 years, right? The American people in the election less than a year ago overwhelmingly said, we want the Republicans and we want to follow their path. And now Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and AOC and Bernie Sanders and all of their talking heads in the corporate legacy media who do their job for them, the terms of the negotiation here is Republicans are being unreasonable unless they give Democrats everything that they want. That's their narrative. That we lost the election in every possible way a year ago, and now we should have our way. We should have everything that we demand. Okay. It works, I guess, sometimes, but not lately. American people have woken up to this. They've woken up. They're not woke. They've woken up. More Hakeem Jeffries.
Senator Fetterman has been critical of Dems' opposition to the CR. We're starting to see some cracks in your conference, too.
You may not be able to hear the question. It's Senator Fetterman has been incredibly outspoken against the tactics of the Democrats, which is true. He has multiple interviews where he's just slamming Democrats for the strategy, the tactics, the fact that people are getting harmed and it's Democrats' fault. Say what you will about Fetterman, and I have in the past, but he is in the swingiest of all swing states. He is a Democrat representing Pennsylvania, which is a critically important state, and it is as purple as you're going to get these days. It bounces back and forth from Republican to Democrat all the time. In fact, he won his Senate seat in 2022, and then 2 years later, the next Senate seat that was open went to a Republican, okay? So I think he kind of gets where the middle of America is right now, and he is saying Democrats are screwing the pooch on all of this. So Hakeem Jeffries is asked about that, about, Fetterman is really critical of what you guys are doing. It looks like your coalition is starting to break. Here's Hakeem.
Where Josh Gottenheimer has said that he thinks the deal that Leader Thune has put on the table, which is a vote on an extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits, is a fair deal if you reopen the government. Do you think this shows that there are more cracks on your side than there are on their side?
Let me explain something to you. There are zero cracks on the Democratic side.
Okay, dude. Dude, Fetterman and a couple of other Democrats have been consistently voting for Republicans in the Senate. And there are more cracks already starting to show. And this guy is trying to sell you, oh, no, we're holding it together. I guess I'll let you decide. I report, you decide. Does that look like a man who is confident and, for that matter, telling you the truth about where things stand with his coalition? Yeah, exactly. Ossoff, Senator Ossoff of Georgia, suddenly is starting to vote with Republicans. Why? Well, because he's the most endangered Democrat running for re-election next year. Suddenly he's voting with Republicans as well. And then there's this C-SPAN, the great bastion of democracy, when they take their calls from listeners and viewers. Here's a Democrat Congresswoman hearing from one of the voters.
Right now, it's the Democrats that are holding up the charade to not fund in past what has been a clean CR. I just want the federal government out of my day-to-day life, and most importantly, they're impacting my wallet.
All right, Mark. Go ahead.
Mark, thank you so much for the call. I know I've been speaking with a lot of my federal workers in Vermont, and I know it's an incredibly challenging time. And we are very concerned, not just about the level of anxiety that this is causing, but also the real dollars and cents issues around not getting paid. And please believe me when I say I do not take that lightly at all.
They don't take it lightly, but they don't do anything. It's the simplest thing in the world for them to alleviate people's suffering and pain and heartache, and that's to vote to keep the government going. And they just refuse to do it. And the reason is because they think they have leverage, they think they've got political influence and power, and they're growing their political base here by continuing to show that they're just fighting. Even if the fight hurts people, it doesn't matter. So here we go, going into the weekend. I thought this would be over by now. But I honestly, I don't think they have a way out. But I'll stand by my prediction here. What is it, Thursday, the 30th? Tomorrow's Halloween. It's going to get spooky. I think that Schumer, what you saw in the video clips that we showed today is Schumer acting like a desperate man. showing his anger, letting it flare up in front of the media. This isn't the sign of someone who's confident with a position. By the way, Thune's anger was very different, if you noticed. His voice wasn't, squeaking or breaking. He wasn't getting shrill and going all falsetto on people. That was righteous anger. Schumer looked like he was desperate and lying, because he was both of those things. Over the weekend, Schumer, I'm going to stand by my prediction, Schumer is going to quietly give the green light for certain moderate, middle of the road-ish, if there is such a thing anymore, Democrats to start speaking out and saying, maybe we need to end this now. Schumer will still hold firm. It's going to look like, these other renegades have gone out and they've formed a little gang of 10. And by the way, to help him save face, Thune will let Susan Collins and Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski and maybe another wishy-washy Republican to go and join with 4 or 5 Democrats so they can have a gang of 10. And they've come up with some resolution that isn't going to be anything other than voting to fund the government, and then have a conversation about Obamacare, which is exactly what Republicans said the last week of September. That's how it's going to end. But right now, Democrats don't see a way out. That's why they continue to bitterly cling on to this destructive policy. And as soon as they work that out and they figure out how to save face and have some kind of talking point that George Stephanopoulos will believe, then they'll be fine. And then we'll be back. But who knows? I'm thinking like a rational person. And this is a party who's about to elect a communist in New York. Go figure. Yesterday, Ted Cruz was pissed off, very angry. It appears he was the target of wiretapping attempts by the FBI under Joe Biden, that a certain Judge Boasberg, you might recognize his name, gave the green light for an extensive surveillance of members of the Senate, Republican members of the Senate, and it turns out a whole network of Republican think tanks, activist groups, and even media entities. This is Watergate, not on steroids, on freaking plutonium pills. And Ted Cruz had had enough. I'm going to show you what he had to say, and specifically calling for the impeachment of that federal judge. Yes, the same federal judge who has a single-handed jihad against Donald Trump on a daily basis. I want to show you that in a second. But first, let's get to the details of this story. You're not seeing it covered much in the corporate legacy media like the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN and everything. I'll explain why they're ignoring this story in a second. And it goes well beyond just their political bias and being in the tank for Democrats. No. It's actually much more deeper than that. Here's our friend Sean Davis, one of the publishers of The Federalist, breaking the latest news that was released by the Judiciary Committee about Operation Arctic Frost. We'll get into the name of this operation as well in a minute. There's a little bit of a clue there in the name of this investigation as to how it was specifically targeting Donald Trump and using the FBI and the Justice Department to get him personally. That's why they called it Arctic Frost. I'll explain in a sec. Arctic Frost whistleblower documents show that the corrupt Biden FBI subpoenaed the bank records, donor lists, and emails of nearly every major conservative organization and leader in the country, including Donald Trump's campaign, the RNC, Conservative Partnership Institute, Save America PAC, America First Policy Institute, even My Pillow. My Pillow! You take a look at the spreadsheet compiled by the Judiciary Committee, and before we even get too deep into this, because you're already going to hear Democrats and liberals and TDS never Trumpers screaming, well, of course they did. They were investigating a crime. There's nothing wrong with the FBI and the DOJ doing these kind of subpoenas over these organizations if these organizations committed a crime. That's not what this was. Okay? Don't fall for that. See, here in America, the FBI and the Justice Department or other law enforcement agencies, they investigate suspects who they believe committed a crime after they discover that a crime has been committed. That's how we do things here in America. Hey, there's a crime. What's the crime? Well, the crime is embezzlement, or the crime is, murder, or grand larceny, whatever, tax fraud, you name it. You got to see that the crime has been committed. We have evidence that the crime has been committed. We have evidence that the law has been broken. Oh, okay. Who did it? Well, we got to find out who did it. We have some suspects. Okay, gather evidence. That's how it works. Here, what they did was, we think that someone may have committed a crime. Could be a whole lot of crimes. Could be insurrection. Could be election interference. We're not sure. We're not sure what crime was committed, but we think these people committed a crime of sorts. So now we're going to go investigate everybody and see if they committed a crime. Now, I understand that when the political left in America, led by Joe Biden and Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray and these other fanatics, because they're on the political left, I understand why they are inspired and motivated by Mao Zedong and Joseph Stalin, because that's where their heart and soul politically is. But they can't take it to such an extreme that they mimic their secret police tactics. And that's what happened here. This is the quintessential show me the man and I'll find you the crime scenario. This dragnet that they cast to investigate organizations, to put pressure on them, to make them feel heat, to find out who's donating to them, so then those people can be targeted. Well, wait a minute. What crime was committed? Oh, the insurrection or something. Really? Insurrection. Funny, because a lot of people got arrested after January 6th, and that one person was charged with insurrection. Oh, well, yeah, but they were going after Trump, see, and they had to go after him. Really? Because when Jack Smith, the special prosecutor investigating Donald Trump, who coordinated all of this outrageous, ridiculous garbage on behalf of you, the American taxpayer, when Jack Smith finally did charge Donald Trump with crimes, those charges, of course, thrown out by the Supreme Court, unconstitutional, but it doesn't matter. When he charged Donald Trump, he never charged him with insurrection. No, they said it was insurrection. They said that he was trying to subvert the Constitution and upend our government with a coup. And because they thought maybe that had happened, they went and started looking for a crime. That's what this story is. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Let's go to more of the details here. Catherine Herridge, independent journalist now. She was too good, so CBS had to let her go. I hope Barry Weiss hires her back. That would be sweet justice, and put her in charge of 60 Minutes. How delicious would that be? She's been all over the Arctic frost dragnet. Over 400 Republican organizations. Now, even if you buy into all of the TDS fever dream conspiracy theories about Trump, 2020 election, January 6th, coup attempt, insurrection, even if you buy into all that garbage, do you really believe that over 400 Republican individuals and organizations all coordinated to do that? Really? You think we're that good? Honestly, have you been paying attention to American politics for the last 5 decades? The joke used to be that I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Republican. We can't get anything straight. Seriously? You think we're that good? You think that we're coordinating? 400 Republican organizations are all holding hands and creating the... Trust me, if we were that good, y'all would never win an election, okay? And of course, nobody believes that. Even the people who were doing the investigating didn't believe that. They wanted access through court orders and subpoenas and wiretaps to look into us so that they could squeeze us, so they could stop us. This was the use of the federal government and the Justice Department to kill the conservative movement in America. And I can prove it to you. I will. First, though, you need to know the details of this. This is a list of the people who were caught up and subpoenaed. by the FBI. And as Mike Benz points out, the dragnet included American media companies, Fox News, Fox Business, Newsmax, OANN, Sinclair. Did we end up on the list, by the way? I'm curious if we did. We may have, for that matter. It includes organizations like the Republican National Committee. The Republican National Committee. Nothing chilling about Joe Biden and a Democrat administration subpoenaing literally every single one of his political opponents and every single one of the organizations and think tanks that are politically aligned with Joe Biden's political opponents. Nixon had an enemies list, but he didn't hand it over to the FBI and the Justice Department and have them create a special prosecutor to go after the enemies list, subpoena the enemies list, wiretap the enemies list, and eventually prosecute the enemies list. He may have wanted to, but he was not as bold, apparently, as Joe Biden. Here's another example. This is from an FBI agent in Seattle, fingering a gentleman named Ed Corrigan. Now, Ed Corrigan is an old DC hand. He's the kind of guy who wears the gray chalk pinstripe suits from Brooks Brothers, okay? He goes back to being a staffer on Senator Jesse Helms's staff, okay, in the Reagan era. He worked at the Heritage Foundation. He now heads up an organization called the Conservative CPI. God, Kevin, help me out.
Partnership Institute.
Partnership Institute. Thank you. Conservative Partnership Institute. They do something really dastardly, CPI. The Conservative Partnership Institute. Oh, in a second, I'll tell you what they do, because it makes them public enemy number one, apparently, according to this FBI staffer. Ed Corrigan is pro-Putin, they claim, and anti-Biden. By the way, this is an FBI agent saying one of the reasons why they need to arrest or indict Ed Corrigan, one of the reasons, one of the pieces of evidence that shows that he's in some way an insurrectionist, is that he is anti-Biden. I could be wrong, but last I checked, it is still legal to oppose the president of the United States. You know how they call Trump an authoritarian and a dictator? I didn't see him do anything to stop the No Kings marches and rallies. But here is an FBI agent in a partially redacted memo fingering Ed Corrigan as a suspect and a target for investigation for criminal activity. And one of the reasons, one of the descriptors to rationalize why Ed Corrigan needs to be targeted is he's anti-Biden. Dude, I know I'm on someone's list at the FBI, if that's all it takes. They consider what Corrigan is doing is treason. Being anti-Biden is treason. Blank believes that, by the way, part of my problem with this from the FBI and Kash Patel, I know that you got a lot going on, but these redactions here, you're redacting the names of the guilty, not the innocent. You're redacting names of people who identified Ed Corrigan as a treasonous traitor to the United States of America because he was anti-Biden. Take those redactions off. Don't protect the guilty, okay? Believes that Corrigan and his boss, Mark Meadows, former chief of staff of President Trump, former congressman from North Carolina, are engaging in willful criminal activity. According to Blank, Corrigan has blank properties at which he wants to build up infrastructure to train people for civil war. Ed Corrigan? Corrigan secretly controls the Freedom Caucus and has plans that are not good for the FBI. Well, there's a crime if you have plans that are not good for the FBI. Corrigan hates the FBI. Also, last I checked, legal. Who he refers to as spooks. By the way, he refers to FBI as spooks. People in the FBI refer to themselves as spooks. People who work at the CIA, people who are in the intelligence community and work in intelligence refer to themselves on a regular basis as spooks. I know people who work in these businesses, these industries, these organizations who call themselves spooks. This is absolutely Maoist what they're doing here. Corrigan claims to have identified in blank as a spook in the blank, on and on and on. All right. I told you that I would reveal what Ed Corrigan and the conservative
partnership.
Thank you. God, I don't know why my brain is stalled on that word. What the Conservative Partnership Institute does that makes them so dangerous and so treasonous. Here's what they do. They conduct training sessions for staffers on Capitol Hill, because it's the Conservative Partnership Institute. It's staffers who work for Republicans. They have training sessions. So these people who work in congressional staffs for Republicans in Congress can learn how to effectively conduct oversight over the executive branch. I don't know if you knew this or not, but the legislative branch, one of their constitutional roles is to conduct oversight over the executive branch. They even have a whole committee called the Oversight Committee. One of those departments of the executive branch that is subject to congressional oversight is the FBI. What did they say about Ed Corrigan? He has plans that are not good for the FBI. Yeah, that's true. If you want to be able to run independent from the Constitution and the legislative branch, and you don't want to be subject to any oversight, then yeah, I guess those would be plans that are not good for the FBI. That's kind of a tell, isn't it? Yeah. Ed Corrigan and the Conservative Partnership Institute conduct regular, thorough seminars to train up congressional staffers to effectively conduct oversight over the executive branch of government. And that makes him treasonous. Plus, being anti-Biden, of course. Yesterday, the Senate Judiciary Committee had a press conference about all of this stuff, and they put out this very informative graphic to show you exactly what Arctic frost is. It was the brainchild of 4 individuals, all appointed by and working for Joe Biden, the most corrupt president we have ever had in our nation's history. Merrick Garland, Lisa Monaco, Jack Smith, and Christopher Wray. It was meant to target President Trump, but to get to President Trump, and as a rationale to get President Trump, they subpoenaed and investigated or wiretapped multiple members of Congress, including 9 members of the Senate, 92 Republican organizations and individuals, 197 subpoenas for over 430 Republican entities and individuals. Nixon can only dream of such a thing. J. Edgar Hoover can only dream of such a thing. Christopher Wray is making J. Edgar Hoover look like Mr. Rogers. This is disgusting. And no, you're not hearing about it in the corporate legacy media. I'll tell you why. Here's the headlines at the New York Times front page. Where have you got it? Anything? Anything? Nothing. Oh, we do have an important article about a college selling Black history murals to avert a financial crisis. That made it to the front page of the New York Times. But nothing about Arctic frost. Okay, what about the Washington Post? I mean, after all, they made their name on the Watergate investigation. Woodward and Bernstein, baby. All the president's men, they're all over it, right? It's happening in their backyard after all. Nope. No, they do have an article about how frustrating it is for people to call the Social Security offices right now. Wait times and trouble you're getting answers. They got that. They got nothing on this. And now people will easily slip into a pattern of saying, oh, it's because of liberal bias. It's because they're in the tank for Democrats, right? That's why they're not covering it. Because now that's part of it, sure. But it goes deeper than that. See, the problem is, if the Washington Post and the New York Times were to cover this story, they'd have to admit their own guilt. You see, they're part of this story. A big part of it. And the reason why they are not informing their readers now about it is because their readers would have to say, well, wait a second. I read all of the articles in this exact same newspaper telling me that Trump was a criminal and that all these entities and organizations that was valid and that they should be criminally investigated. And the fact of the matter is, by not covering this story, they're admitting their guilt. You see, if you're the New York Times and you're the Washington Post and you agree that this was a vast network of 400 Republicans and conservative entities that were involved in a coup of the United States government, and now it's been revealed by the Judiciary Committee that Jack Smith had all these subpoenas and this network of investigations, well, you would put that story out there saying, hey, looks like Jack Smith was doing the right thing. Looks like Jack Smith did a great job. Chuck Grassley's trying to claim that this is bad, but we've already reported to our readers. We already know that this was a righteous, constitutional, and appropriate investigation, but they're not writing that story, are they? No, they're not. They're ignoring it completely. And that tells you they know this thing stinks like rotten fish. They know. And so does Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was specifically targeted by Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and Joe Biden. And Ted Cruz was pissed off.
The Biden Justice Department signed off on issuing subpoenas for the phone records of at least 9 U.S. senators. 20% of the Republicans in the United States Senate were the target of this fishing expedition. They did so in complete contravention of the Constitution, of separation of powers, of the speech and debate clause, of free speech, of basic rights of privacy. This is an executive who believes it is justified spying on their opponents in the legislature because they convince themselves the ends justify the means.
That's right. I told you that this all comes from Biden and that they thought they were righteous, that they were on the side of the angels to go after. They truly believed that all of these Republicans and all of these senators and all these organizations and ultimately you were the enemy of the American people. How do I know that? Because I saw Joe Biden's speech that he gave before Independence Hall when it was bathed in blood red. And he was screaming that MAGA Republicans, you'll remember, MAGA Republicans are an existential threat to the future of our country. That MAGA Republicans are an existential threat to our Constitution and free and fair elections. You remember it? I remember it. We all saw it. It was a talking point of Democrats. So if you really believe that, then you can convince yourself that it is righteous and noble and beautiful to use the levers of power that you have to exploit the Constitution and to investigate not just your political enemies, but the enemies of the Republic itself. And that's exactly what they did. Ted Cruz had more to say.
Arctic frost is Joe Biden's Watergate. Merrick Garland was a fundamentally corrupt attorney general. Jack Smith was a fundamentally corrupt prosecutor. This was a political enemies list from the beginning. 197 subpoenas for 430 Republican entities and individuals. That is an absolute and egregious abuse of power.
Now, we already knew from a press release a couple of weeks ago from Chuck Grassley's office that the FBI had subpoenaed metadata from the cell phone carriers to track these senators' cell phone and mobile phone activities in the months after the January 6th events. That was from AT&T. What we learned yesterday, that the surveillance of call data did not end there. It got quite extensive and even reached to the office phones of these senators. You hear about constitutional crisis a lot. This is the FBI, and by the way, this is a special prosecutor who was never confirmed by the Senate. Every other U.S. attorney who works for the Justice Department has to go through Senate confirmation. Jack Smith never did. This is a rogue, powerful, unconstitutional prosecutor attempting to use surveillance tactics on the legislative branch of government. Specifically, the Judiciary Committee, these guys who were charged with oversight of the Justice Department. The Justice Department answers to these senators. These senators answer to us, the American people. That's how the Constitution was set up. Jack Smith answers to no one. And he tried to use this power to go after the one entity that has oversight over the Justice Department. There should be nightly primetime specials about this right now if cable news actually cared about the truth.
I've recently been informed by Verizon that at least 11 members with Verizon accounts were affected. That includes a hard line for Senator Cruz's office and a staffer's cell phone for former Senator Loeffler. AT&T informed me they challenged the legal basis for Jack Smith's efforts, and Smith backed down.
Did you hear that? AT&T challenged the constitutionality of Jack Smith's subpoena for these phone records. AT&T challenged it. You realize, of course, that to have the subpoena to demand these phone records from AT&T, a federal judge had to approve it. So AT&T actually had more understanding of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights than a federal judge. Oh, and who was the federal judge? You might recognize his name, Boasberg. Yes, Boasberg, the guy who told Trump to turn a plane around in mid-flight outside the boundaries of the United States of America when he was constitutionally and appropriately sending terrorists from Venezuela to a prison in El Salvador. That Judge Boasberg, who at every step of the way has tried to block everything that Donald Trump has done since he's been inaugurated, because Judge Boasberg believes that he's more powerful than the executive branch of government. He's Judge Boasberg, after all. Yeah, he signed off on a whole lot of this. Cruz named him specifically yesterday.
I am right now calling on the House of Representatives to impeach Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg put his robe down, stood up, and said, "Sign me up to be part of the partisan vendetta against 20% of the Republicans in the Senate." That is a dereliction of duty and a violation of the judicial oath. And I want to thank Chairman Grassley and Chairman Johnson for pursuing this tenaciously like a dog on a bone. We are going to get the answers of every person who signed off on this abuse of power, and mark my words, there will be accountability for these zealots who wanted to corrupt the Department of Justice and corrupt the judiciary in order to try to attack their enemies list.
All right. And that's good stuff. And we love Cruz, and he's right. And it would be great if the House did that with Judge Boasberg. And I love that they're going after all of these zealots, as Cruz put it. It's going to get interesting, though, because I believe, and I think I'm right, that a lot of those zealots who participated in this, supported this, enabled this, encouraged this, cheered this on, some of those zealots are sitting in desks right alongside Senator Cruz in the Senate chamber. Let's go back for a moment when Attorney General Pam Bondi appeared before the Judiciary Committee. Here's Adam Schiff. Oh, yes, Adam Schiff. He's got fingerprints all over this garbage, right? Well, do you remember how Adam Schiff reacted when the discussion in this hearing turned to whether Jack Smith, this rogue, unconstitutional, Inspector Javert type special prosecutor who's all over this, who spearheaded all of this, when the subject of Jack Smith came up in this hearing, and whether Pam Bondi and the Trump administration would be looking into any of the activities of Mr. Smith. Remember this?
The president has said Jack Smith should go to jail. Will you investigate Jack Smith?
Senator, I haven't seen the file. I haven't seen the investigation. I haven't looked at anything. It would be irresponsible of me to make a commitment regarding anything without, you're a long practicing attorney, without looking at a file.
So you would need a
Period.
factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
Not a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
And not a summary by the president either, right?
Absolutely.
So a summary by the president or his desire to investigate Jack Smith would not be enough for you to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
I will look at the facts and evidence in any case. And sitting here, 72%,
sitting here today.
Senator, 72% of
Please,
Americans
I only have
have
7
lost
minutes.
faith in the Department of Justice.
Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Sitting here today, yes or no?
Senator, I will look at the facts and the circumstances.
You can't answer that question.
Brought to me.
You're not a part of the department yet. There's no worry about divulging
I'm sitting
law
here as a
enforcement
nominee.
sensitive information. So just tell us,
I'm
are you
sitting here as a
aware,
nominee.
just tell us, are you aware of a factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Yes or no?
Senator, what I'm hearing on the news
Are
is
you aware of
horrible.
a?
Do I know if he committed a crime? I have not
You
looked
seem reluctant to answer a simple question. Let me ask you a different simple question.
Wow, he seems really, really concerned about whether Jack Smith will get investigated or not, right? It's weird. He seems nervous about the idea that Jack Smith might be investigated. I would love for someone to ask Jack Smith or Christopher Wray or Merrick Garland a similar question. Are you aware of a factual predicate that would support the 450 plus subpoenas that you have pulled on Republicans, senators, congressmen, and media entities, as well as think tanks? Is there a factual predicate to suggest that they're guilty of a crime? Because they didn't seem too bothered about investigating them. But now we need a factual predicate. Why is Adam Schiff so worried about an investigation into Jack Smith? This was 9 months ago, 10 months ago during the confirmation hearing. It's a funny thing. Jack Smith is pure as the pristine snow. He is one of the greatest, most dedicated lawyers and law enforcement investigators and prosecutors that the United States Justice Department has ever encountered. He's blameless. He's clean as a whistle. He's spotless. I know this because the media told me. Remember how excited they were when he got a Subway sandwich after bringing down indictments against Trump? Jack Smith is the finest man ever to walk the halls of the U.S. Justice Department. So why would they be so worried about an investigation into his perfect, pristine investigation of Donald Trump and all of these other people? You see, sitting there at that moment, Ted Cruz and Chuck Grassley and all the other Republicans you saw at the press conference yesterday, they didn't know that Jack Smith had tapped their phones, had subpoenaed the phone companies for their records. They didn't know any of that. Do you think Adam Schiff might have known? Do you? Maybe. Meanwhile, last night, J.D. Vance was confronted at the Turning Point USA event that he did. He stood in for Charlie Kirk. Great event. You should watch as much of it as you can. During the question and answer session, somebody challenged him with a question that I hear a lot in town here in D.C., and that is, you Republicans, you should be careful. Be real careful with all the things you're doing here, because the second Democrats are in power, they're going to do it to you. You hear that a lot, don't you? Which, by the way, I think is hilarious on multiple levels, which I can get to in a minute. But let's hear J.D. Vance's response to that first.
But there is something you guys are doing that is kind of disturbing me a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. You guys have sent the military into Washington, D.C. and a few other cities that I can't think of off the top of my head, which first off, they've had wonderful results. Like no one can deny the results of that. It's wonderful. Some might even say the greatest. I'm a comedian.
I like this guy. Who is this guy?
Thank you, JD. I like you too.
Now he's gonna ask the question about all the shit that we did wrong, but that's okay. Go ahead and ask your question.
But yeah, I'm just wondering, well, it's not necessarily something you did wrong, but it's what could someone else do wrong? Let's say we get a complete tyrant in office, and let's say Turning Point USA is having a huge protest against something really bad that we don't like, and let's say he's a president is saying that it's getting violent. How can we? I'm trying to think. My mind's kind of blank. What is the difference between what you're doing and how could we prevent someone from abusing that power?
Yeah. So look, I understand where the question is coming from, and I think it's a fair question. And it's going to sound like I'm being sarcastic, and it really is not meant in any offense. But when you talk about what could another administration do, to take a wild hypothetical example totally off the top of my head, what if Joe Biden sent the Federal Bureau of Investigation to start arresting his political opponents? Okay? So here's something that I want conservatives, I want every conservative to remember. It's an important part of my entire political philosophy is we cannot be afraid to do something because the left might do it in the future. The left is already going to do it regardless of whether we do it. That is the takeaway of the last 40 years.
Yeah, the left is already going to do it. In fact, the left has probably already done it. In fact, the stuff that they've done that we haven't uncovered, or at least hasn't been revealed, is probably mind-blowing. And it's one of the reasons why it hasn't been revealed, because we can't handle the truth. That's the only appropriate response. Oh no, what if the left gets into power and they do these things? Have you not been paying attention? Have you not seen what they've done? And they never pay a price at all. The only response to that has been, yeah, you're right, it was wrong for them to go after Trump, but they paid for it in the election. I'm sorry, losing an election after the constitutional abuse of power that these people, losing an election is the least of the pain that they should feel for what they did. How about jail? How about jail? And one other response that I would throw out there is, well, we shouldn't do these things because then when Democrats go into power, they might do it. Here's the thing. You may be right. The question is not whether Republicans shouldn't do it because Democrats might do it, and on and on and on. The question is it the right thing to do? You shouldn't call in the National Guard to cut down on crime in these cities because then Democrats might do it for nefarious reasons. Okay, well, are we doing it for nefarious reasons? Because that matters. This isn't a new constitutional power that's being exercised. The power is there, young man. Okay? And this power has been utilized and wielded for good and righteous and appropriate constitutional things in the past, and that's what's happening right now with regard to crime in these cities and cooperation with local law enforcement to fix the problem, or at the very least, if you're not getting cooperation from local law enforcement, to go in and protect federal interests in these cities. It's been done before for very good reasons, and it's being done now for very good reasons. Your argument is not whether Democrats will do it or the left will do it in the future. I'm sure they will. The question is, will they do it for unconstitutional reasons and for nefarious reasons? And let's just cross that bridge when we know we get to it, because we know that we will. President Trump, by the way, was flying back on Air Force One while all of this was going down last night. President Trump finished his meetings with Xi Jinping. He finished the summit with Japan. He finished the peace deal with Cambodia and Thailand. He finished working on the summit in South Korea. He finished doing the business of the head of state overseas, got on Air Force One, opened up his phone, and saw all this stuff about Jack Smith. And I have a feeling he looked and said, what the is going on here? Are you kidding me? Subpoenas of the phone records of senators, a dragnet of 450 different Republican people and entities caught up in it, 20% of the U.S. Senate under surveillance by this rogue prosecutor who wasn't even confirmed by the U.S. Senate. What? So he did what Donald Trump does. He posted on Truth Social. He started with this one. These thugs should all be investigated and put in prison. A disgrace to humanity. Deranged Jack Smith is a criminal. And then he is a criminal and should be in jail, a major lowlife and failure, an ugly person, both inside and out. Beat him badly. I'm sorry. I beat him badly and love watching him squirm now. Donald Trump, the President of the United States, on Air Force One, middle of this morning, en route back to Washington, D.C., as he's now gotten wind of what's been going on here this last week. He had bigger fish to fry. That's just scratching the surface on this story. Oh, one other thing I promised to tell you. I want to deliver. Arctic frost, right? That's the name of the investigation. Is it Arctic frost?
Yep.
Thank you. Why did they name it Arctic frost? Usually the FBI, they have a computer that uses like a randomizer to come up with names for investigations. Sometimes, though, prosecutors want to go in and they want to assign a name that's specifically, connected to the investigation. Like Crossfire Hurricane, by the way. Crossfire Hurricane was a lyric out of a Rolling Stones song. Rolling Stones is one of the songs that Trump used in all of his rallies in 2016. You don't always get what you want. They did Crossfire Hurricane as the name of the investigation into Donald Trump, as a bit of a hat tip there. This time around, Arctic frost. Why Arctic frost? Well, Arctic frost is an orange that survives the frost in Florida and is utilized in the orange industry. Yeah, orange, because Trump is orange. And oh, by the way, this investigation encompassed down to the Florida files investigation when the FBI went into Mar-a-Lago to get files because they thought that it was all part of this big anti-constitutional coup attempt led by the orange man, Donald Trump. They're cute and they're clever, aren't they? Except they made one mistake. Okay, two mistakes. They thought that they would damage Donald Trump so much with these investigations and the innuendos and the prosecutions that came out of New York that he wouldn't win the election, and he did. That was a big mistake because now he controls the Justice Department and the FBI, and they're discovering all of the garbage that went on during the Biden administration. The second mistake with their Arctic frost and their orange and their Florida thing is that they raided Mar-a-Lago. That was a big mistake because now when the Trump Justice Department under Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, when they initiate their indictments over the abuse of power and the violations of the Constitution and the grand conspiracy against Trump and his campaign and his administration and all these other people who got caught up in this, well, when they initiate that grand jury, it's not going to be here in D.C. No. Because of that FBI raid down in Mar-a-Lago, they have every right to pull that grand jury down in Florida, South Florida. Trump country. That grand jury and the indictments, should they come, will be handed down in Florida. The court that will hear the prosecutions will be in Florida. The 12 members of the jury to determine whether these people violated federal law will be from Florida. That's a nice tall glass of orange juice, isn't it? November's a big month for falling leaves in Turkey and, of course, big-time college football, but it's also National Caregivers Month in the United States. I think I've shared my stories about this year caring for my father in his final days, and I think I've also talked about my special needs son and the whole network of caregivers in our family that take care of him. We need to focus as much as we can on those caregivers, and policy-wise in America, they've kind of been neglected. So let's bring in a friend of the program from the AARP, John Hishta. He's the Senior Vice President of Campaigns. And John, caregivers, we've had this conversation before. A huge part of our culture and, frankly, our economy that really hasn't been addressed by policymakers to the level they should be at the national level or at the state level. Would you agree?
That's right, Larry. And unfortunately, it's one of those issues where you really have to continue to raise the awareness, not just with policymakers, but to encourage folks like yourself who are caregivers to become part of a broader movement, if you will. There are 63 million caregivers in the United States. A lot of them don't even think of themselves as caregivers. They're just taking care of a loved one, whether it's a family member who happens to be their mom or dad, or a special needs kid like yourself. And, we need to make sure that policymakers understand kind of the trials and tribulations that they go through on a day-to-day basis. As I like to say it, you either were a caregiver, are a caregiver, or will be a caregiver at some point in your life. And they are a big time backbone to our healthcare system in the country. There's no doubt about it.
From a policy perspective, can we sort of define our terms here? Is there an official definition of a caregiver? Does it have to be somebody who's paid to be a caregiver? Can it be a family member? How is that defined?
So I would say the overwhelming majority of them are volunteer caregivers. It's folks like you and me who have regular jobs and lives, who are just taking care of loved ones. There are some within the report that we just did who do get some stipends, whether it's through state programs or Medicaid, but it's not a full-time job in any shape or form. So for the most part, it is folks who take care of their loved ones on a day in and day out basis. And there's 63 million of them around the country.
Wow. And I do want to drill down on that state level data that you guys just accumulated. But on the federal level, I do remember in President Trump's first term, I think he signed the RAISE Act, which focused on some caregivers. And I do remember during the campaign, it was a big applause line during his rally that he really wanted to do something for caregivers. I don't think it made the final cut there in the big, beautiful bill. That's what happens federally sometimes. Is that still an emphasis here to try to get something done maybe in this next round in Congress? Or is the emphasis more at the state level? And is that actually more effective?
I would say it's both. Unfortunately, the federal tax credit for caregivers did not make it into the final big, beautiful bill, so to speak. But that doesn't mean we're not going to continue to push it. The president still has it on his agenda. We have some wonderful champions in Congress, in both the House and the Senate. And people understand it's important. And, you know, at the end of the day, if we can figure out a way to provide some needed financial resources to caregivers, this is one way to do it. I mean, on average, caregivers spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $7,200 a year out of their own pocket to care for their loved ones. And so if we can do it on the federal level, we ought to. On the state level, we're going to continue to encourage state legislatures and governors to work with solutions as well. It could be anything from paid leave to respite care to state level tax credits for that matter. And so we'll continue to push on both levels because, as you know, to really create a movement around the country, you need all hands on deck, so to speak.
Well, and as Senior Vice President of Campaigns, you often look at these issues through the electoral lens, through sometimes a partisan lens. One thing that struck me about the state level data you guys have accumulated is that this is not a blue state, red state thing. This cuts across the board.
It's an urgency issue more than anything else. It's a question of raising the urgency to help caregivers around the country to make sure that they get the help they need. It's not a blue state, red state thing. If you look at all the polling that we've did over the years, it basically says the same. You know, overwhelmingly, people support, for instance, the federal tax credit. It's in the 80% range, you know, as an example. And very few issues get that high in American politics, as you know, these days.
When I introduced this topic just a few minutes ago, I mentioned this as kind of a cultural issue as well. It does strike me that something sort of pivoted in this country over the last 50, 60, 70 years with regard to caregiving. Let's start at least with our retired Americans and the elderly. I think if we went back in a time machine, John, I don't think it would be even a question that families would take care of grandma and grandpa, and there would always be sort of that communal home. That's not the case anymore. And is that part of the problem here, that culturally we have not sort of adopted and taken ownership of what had traditionally been a responsibility for all of us to take care of our elderly?
I hope not, but to some degree, I think you may be right. I mean, I can remember when I grew up, as an example, when my grandfather died, my grandmother moved in with us, and she lived with us for 18 years of my life. And so in many respects, we not only cared for her, but she cared for me too, if that makes sense. And so I'm not sure how much of that happens nowadays as in years past. And look, at the end of the day, folks who are older want to live into their older years in their own homes or in homes with their families. They really don't want to go into institutional care if they can prevent it from happening. And so the more relief we can provide for caregivers and the older generation to allow that to happen, I think, to your point, culturally, it's very beneficial, not just for the folks who we're caring for, but younger folks as well.
Yeah, and I think that there's this assumption that, oh, well, you know, that comes out of my taxes or it comes out of Medicare and the elderly taken care of. That's not the case.
That's the case.
And
That's
of
right.
course, Americans, most of us, I still want to think, don't imagine that a problem is going to be addressed by creating a government program. What is the solution? When we say relief for caregivers, what does that look like?
Again, I go back to three main elements: time, money, and resources. Anything we can provide for folks. So for instance, we have on our webpage, which is aarp.org/caregivers, you can find resources to help you get through the day-to-day elements of caregiving from that perspective, in terms of lessons learned, some things to do, that sort of thing. But at the same time, you know, if we could continue to ask, for instance, companies to provide some sort of caregiving leave, that would be beneficial. We at AARP provide a fairly robust caregiving paid leave program for folks who have to go and do that. And so the more we can do things like that, working with business, working with communities, I think the better off we'll be.
When you look at the state-by-state breakdown and the data that you've accumulated there, what really sticks out to you? What sort of, when you look at it, you've seen it all, John, you've been around. When you look at where things break down state by state, what sort of made you sit up and take notice?
Well, it was the first time we've ever done a joint study like this on a state-by-state basis. And so we really don't have anything to compare it to in terms of years past. But I would say overall, you know, in some cases, there's wide variations from state to state in terms of the number of caregivers, how much they're paying out of pocket and things of that nature. And we're still really diving into that data as we speak. One of the interesting things that has come out recently is almost a third of all caregivers on a state-by-state basis are what's called sandwich generation caregivers. So they're raising their kids and caring for their parents at the same time. Just another added element to the whole thing.
My mom was taking care of my dad into his older years, and she's a little bit younger than him. So I think that my brothers and I just always thought, you know, she'd be okay. She's younger than dad, and she'll be there to help him. But then she got to be kind of old too, and it reached a point where she couldn't handle him physically anymore. You know, if he fell down, she couldn't get him up. And so I guess my question is, well, what kind of reason we suddenly recognized, oh my gosh, we need to be all hands in and we got to take care of dad now. And I got to tell you, I didn't know where to turn. Where can people go to sort of get some resources, get information? Are you guys able to provide that?
Yeah, we are. Again, I would go to aarp.org/caregivers resource guides as well, which provides all that type of information to help people on a day-to-day basis. One of the things that I learned, just as an aside from a personal experience as well, when I cared for my parents, I ended up downloading their medical information on my iPhone. So that I not only had that, I also had their living wills and things on it, so that when I got to the hospital, I wasn't carrying around a lot of pieces of paper. I was in a position where I could just say, here's the information. So they cut down on time and resources and things of that nature. And so that's what we're trying to do with this caregiving resources guide, is provide information for folks on just practical things like you're talking about when it comes to dealing with folks.
What states are doing it best right now? Obviously, everyone has some room for improvement, but if you were giving some grades at the end of the semester, which states do you think are okay?
You know, I'm not sure I would really pick one state out one way or another. I think, you know, there are multiple levels of it, and we just got to encourage to all boats rise with a rising sea, so to speak, and really push it that way more than anything else.
It's very Reagan-esque, actually, of you. I appreciate that. One thing that I've been reading about is what's under undercounted or under-recognized is the impact on people's lives when suddenly they're in the position to be a caregiver. And of course, none of us are going to say, no, we're not going to do that. You got to do it. It's not you don't have a choice, but you can't anticipate it. Have you been able to quantify the impact on people's lives through the big things that you were just pointing out, financially, obviously, but also the time and the emotional strain?
Yeah, I mean, emotional strain's hard to quantify, but not a lot of folks are, frankly, Larry, in yours and my shoes, where we have the ability to go and take care of our loved ones and still be able to do our work as well. And so, for those folks who are working hourly jobs and things of that nature, their salaries lost. There's time lost, and it has an effect on their well-being, not just financially, but also from an emotional standpoint, like you mentioned.
So what should people do? This is resonating with our viewers and our listeners right now, and they're like, yeah, listen, I'd love to get involved. This is an issue, again, like we said, cuts across party lines, and it affects all of us. What can they do to sort of get activated on this issue and maybe bring it to the attention of their representatives?
Join our cause. If you go to our website, we have our cause is called Caregivers for Caregiving. You can sign up. You'll continue to get emails and notices from us. But at that point, we can also help you when it comes to communicating with your member of Congress or with your state legislator or governor or United States senator to continue to push this issue and continue to talk about the things that they can do to help folks overall. Again, going back to whether it's things like tax credits or respite care or workplace protections or training programs and things of that nature. The more we can raise the awareness of the issue and really create this urgency so that we can provide not just financial relief, but also relief when it comes to time and resources, we're going to be all better off in the long run.
And John, because of our digital platform, we have a national and international reach with this show. But because I'm based in D.C. and known in D.C., I'm proud that we have a pretty high-profile contingent of D.C. policymakers, elected officials, and their staffers on Capitol Hill. I'd love you to sort of close things out here by reiterating to them and to all of their voters who are listening that this is good politics. This is a great issue that you can win an election with.
That's exactly right. And not every issue needs to be a divisive issue. At the end of the day, it's really, really nice and beneficial to bring people together around those issues like caregiving that everybody supports, everybody is affected by, and everybody needs help with. And I would sincerely hope and pray that the policymakers in DC on the Capitol Hill would see this issue as something that they ought to come together with and work on, because there's no one real solution. It's going to continue to take time and more bites at the apple, so to speak. And so the more we can encourage these conversations and the more we can get Capitol Hill staff to talk to their members of Congress and really champion these issues like tax credits for folks, I think the better off overall our society will be and our culture will be.
Agreed. John Hishta, thank you for the conversation and helping me bring this. Matters a lot to me. So I love having a conversation about it.
We appreciate you being a champion for us on this issue, Larry. It's really important, and everything that you do is just a huge thanks.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you. Thank you, John Hishta. And listen, whether you are focusing on the 10 Commandments and honoring your mother and father and everything that entails, or whether you look at any of the preachings from Jesus in the New Testament, when he preached, he talked about the widows and taking care of the widows and orphans a big part of the gospel message. You're going to be in that position where you're going to do your duty, your Judeo-Christian duty, to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves. We're not asking the government to do it for us. We're just asking the government to recognize what it takes and help us out a bit when we're in that position. That's what it's all about. Let's get that website up there one more time for AARP. It is .org/caregiving. And thank you for your attention to this matter. And before we wrap up the show today, we have some breaking news that's going to impact this show quite a bit next week, everybody. It's been announced that Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican Congresswoman from Georgia, will be a guest on The View next week. I think we might have to do a segment or two on that. And that is a wrap for today's show. Thanks for watching. We will be back tomorrow, as always. Oh, let's get to your super chats, though. Sorry. Super chats. Super chats. Very exciting. Stumble Boots, $2 super chat. Thank you. You are cool as well, Clippy. I appreciate it. Always first up, Stumble Boots. That's impressive. Thank you. Ken Mack with $2 super chat. Love your politics, Larry. Keep on going. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm doing my best, man. I come from the Rush Limbaugh, Ronald Reagan world of American politics. And everyone's, it's funny. Everybody, my generation is like, well, I was Reagan. It's hard to get accustomed to Trump. It hasn't been that hard for me. It really hasn't. There's a lot of similarities there. And the policies, the principles hold strong. Did you know that Bill Kristol announced today that he's could vote for Zoran Mamdani? Did that guy ever believe anything that he said? Yeah. God's best friend, GBF, with £5 over there in the UK. I became addicted when you showed the herd of Dems singing the same song. Podcast poetry. Oh, God, that was a while ago. Wasn't that over a year ago, that video?
Well, to be fair, it happens more than once.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Thank you, GBF. BB is the ultimate show me the man and I'll show you the Bugs Bunny toy crime example. Yeah, I don't know enough about internal politics in Israel. Thank you for the £5. Jeff Depew Sr. with $2 super chat. What happened to true journalism in America? You're looking at it, my friend. Not investigative journalism, but certainly commentary and opinion journalism, which is as old as journalism itself. In fact, one could argue that the first major journalist in America was before we were even a country. That would be Thomas Paine, of course, anonymous blogger, I like to refer to him as, with common sense. And he was an opinion journalist. So what we're doing is very much in that spirit. In fact, if you'd like to see me expand on that idea, get my book, Shameless Liars. It's one of the first chapters that I do about the founding and about our First Amendment and freedom of the press. And Thomas Paine, America's first anonymous blogger. All right. Thanks for that, Jeff Dupuy. Pew. Patrick with a £10 super chat. The Anti-Deficiency Act is the problem. Amend it so the federal agencies always continue to operate at prior year funding levels until appropriations are renewed. 3-line amendment, simple majority, and they'll never do it. But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Thanks, Patrick. God's best friend, £2 super chat. Your brain is here. Ransom proposals. Welcome. Yeah, exactly. That's the Democrats' tactics right now. Thank you, GBF. Jeremy Gantz with a $9.99 super chat. What makes me angry is they gaslighted, censored, arrested, and canceled conservatives. Now the chickens have come home to roost. Their crime exposed. They cry government weaponization. Yeah, exactly. And the reason they cry government weaponization is because they know all well that that's exactly what they did. That almost always they're accusing you of what they are already guilty of. Thank you, Jeremy. It makes me angry as well. Britton Johnson, $5 super chat. Man, I love your show, Larry. Well, thank you. I love your Jeep Wrangler. Is that a Rubicon or is that the OG Wrangler? I can't tell from this angle, but it's nice. It's nice to see a Wrangler actually off-roading instead of, just all beautiful and pristine and driving down a suburban street like with a soccer mom. I like seeing Jeeps in their natural habitat. I always have to, sorry, I'm back to your super chat. Thank you for the $5, Britton. I always have to catch up late, but it keeps my day going. You're the best. That means the world to us. Thank you. We love doing this show and we appreciate it. We want to be a part of your day. Thank you, Britton. Beth Walburn with a $10 super chat. Walmart Obama is a typical Democrat. I love all of the nicknames for Hakeem Jeffries that sort of reduce him to just a dime store version of Obama. That always amuses me. Thank you, Beth Walburn, for that. Paul Sassy with a $10 super chat. I have to listen to you every day. I have to listen to you. Well, you don't have to unless you're addicted. And then if that's the case, I understand because I'm addicted to doing this. Love your show. Keep it up. Thank you, Paul. And I like your Yoda. That's like that's not OG Yoda. That's Yoda from the more recent films. Thank you, Paul. Edward Emmer, with a lot of new names today. Or not frequent names. A $10 super chat from Edward Emmer, sending our love to you and have a happy Halloween. When is you late night show starting? Am I doing a late night show that I'm supposed? Did I miss a memo? Did they put out a press release?
No, it just depends on how much you love our audience, really.
I'll tell you, if we added another show, it wouldn't be late night. But we have considered adding a second show, Edward, but not late night. You know what? Depending on where you live, you can listen to my morning radio show, and it could be late night. Like my morning radio show in DC is 2 a.m. on the West Coast. That's late night. Maybe that's what we're doing. That's terrific. Thank you so much for the super chats. Are we done with the super chats? Don't forget to like and subscribe our show, like our video, and subscribe to our show. And tomorrow, do we have Chris Stigall joining us?
In theory.
All right, tomorrow, our Big Friday extravaganza brought to you by The Lion, and it will be with our buddy, Chris Stigall, America's sweetheart, Chris Stigall. Love that
In
man.
theory.
In theory. And if he's not here, well, blame him. I'll be here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. In the meantime, oh my gosh, it's Halloween. Should we be in costume tomorrow, Kevin?
Do we want to scare anybody?
Well, it doesn't have to be scary.
Boo.
Oh, hang on. We just got one more. $5.99 from Beth Walburn. Congrats on your marathon finish and beautiful medal. What? This old thing? And usually I don't look at the chats, but I saw it come by and it says, since it mentioned my marathon. Oh, did you not know? Yes, I just ran the Marine Corps marathon. Yes, a man my age. Imagine that. Yes, this is the medal. Thanks for asking. Thank you, Beth, very much for giving me an opportunity to humble brag about the marathon. All right, that's it. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.